Call the roll.
Chair Diani.
Present.
Ms. Carpenter.
Here.
Ms. Grimes is not present. Mr. Gutierrez.
Here.
Mr. Sabas.
Here.
Mr. Wilson is not present. Ms. Young.
Here.
And our Councilmember Sepulveda is not present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we get started, let's welcome our new member. Mr. Sabas? Sabas. Would you like to say a word or introduce yourself? Or?
Sure. Hi, I'm Chris Sabas. I'm the NBA's new appointee. I'm a member at Sherrard Row, Boynton Harbison, and where I do mostly litigation and healthcare work, and I'm looking forward to working with all.
Good. Thank you for joining us. Okay. We'll move to item number 2 in the agenda, which is public comment period.
No one signed up.
And no one has signed up. So we will move to item number 3, which is approval of the minutes of July 8th, 2024. We've all received a copy of the minutes. However,
There are some revisions that we noticed needed to take place.
okay, so there will be revisions to the minutes, and we will defer approval of these minutes until our next meeting. Okay? So that brings us to item number 4, notice of appeal rights, and I'd ask our board secretary to provide those rights.
After a contested hearing by this board, a party may appeal to the Chancery or Circuit Court of Davidson County by filing a writ of certiorari within 60 days. Any party wishing to pursue an appeal is encouraged to seek independent legal counsel to ensure that deadlines and procedural requirements are satisfied.
Thank you. Okay, that gets us to the next item. I will say I'm going to use chair discretion and move it around a little bit. I'm going to pull up agenda item number 7, Department of Law Legal Training Manual, just to pull at that since it's kind of more of an introductory document. It's in your package. It is the Metropolitan Department of Law Legal Training Manual for onboarding of 2025. It was sent to all of us electronically a while ago, when it came out, I guess, sometime maybe January. And the reason I asked that it be put on the agenda, just to touch base, just to go over it, it's a helpful document. And I actually have a question. I wanted to just comment on 1 or 2 things. So it's a good document to read and review. It kind of sets out the, important things, public meeting, open meeting, public records, rules and responsibilities. There is a section on rules and responsibilities that refers to boards that are quasi-judicial or advisory, and it speaks to ex parte communication, and only because that came up in this past year of our service here on the board, there was ex parte communication. I just wanted to bullet that, and we have both, and I guess I'll ask legal on this, because this board obviously has clearly advisory. We make recommendations. We actually have advisory opinion drafting responsibilities under the code. And I don't know if we're considered quasi-judicial at all, because we do make findings, and particularly now that we actually can take action, which is determinative, binding determinations in a sense. So we kind of maybe straddle both quasi-judicial and advisory, and we don't really even need to drill down and say we need to be one or the other. The only reason I raise it is on the ex parte communication. Our emails are publicly facing, they are posted. Recently, in this past year, we had members of the public who were bringing matters before us, sending us emails to the email that the Metro Clerk's Office has. And I think, irrespective of whether we're primarily advisory or quasi-judicial, I just wanted to touch base to let folks know that they should not be clearly responding to anything ex parte. But even once you see that it relates to your service on the board, I think the best practice is to try just not read it. And that if you receive something, then when we do meet on the issue, to bring it, to make it, to to let the board know that you've been contacted on an ex parte basis. And I'll ask legal to comment on my comments.
Sure. Sorry, I'm trying to find the page number. 'cause
Yeah,
it's, where's the section.
The section on
Sorry.
ex parte.
It's in the roles and responsibilities section.
Page number is.
We don't have page numbers.
Yeah, that's, okay, yeah, I've seen it. So, let me say that, this was just written just globally, just for all boards and commissions, not necessarily, for a particular board and commission, there might be unique circumstances. So this board, when there is a complaint, you are acting in a really quasi-judicial capacity. And the code specifically says that once a complaint has been received, and until a written decision has been issued by the board, no member of the board shall participate in any communication regarding the allegations or merits of the complaint outside of the board's public meetings or hearings, except as contemplated by these procedures, which, so essentially, once a complaint is filed, there are no ex parte communications. And if one is attentive to the mail, it's disclosed so that every board member knows that another board member has been contacted. Yeah, so with regards to complaints and hearings, you're essentially acting as a quasi-judicial body, even though ultimately you make recommendations to council. The product of your meetings with regards to complaints will be to make a recommendation, not to take a decision for the council.
Yeah.
But it contemplates that you act in a quasi-judicial capacity to address a particular case based on the specific facts and testimony on the record.
Okay, that's clarifying, so that's great. And so just be attentive to that and just understand the ex parte dimension of it. And then the only other question, and with respect to that, just know that there, in here on the Public Record Act, it suggests that if you don't want your personal, because any communication is public record, just be aware of what email account you're using and what email account the Metro Clerk has for us that's posted. I'll just change that if you want to limit it. And then just
So
last.
can I say something about that?
Yeah.
So I just want to kind of just harp on this, that regardless of where the communication is housed,
Yeah.
it's the nature of the communication is a public record. So even if it's in your own personal email, it will not shield it if it's communications pertaining to the business of this board.
Yes.
So just something to keep in mind.
Yes, yep. And I think here our powers are set out, and this change that we're hearing about today does not affect our powers to take action, assess penalties or sanctions or enforcement by our board. So we have that in the code to review what our powers are. So what it changes is just how an individual who fails to comply with the Lobbying Act comes before us. Does that make sense? Is that your understanding of how that works?
It is, yeah.
Okay. Good.
There's, so there's automatic, the clerk gets to revoke any registration.
Right.
With
aging. Well, because I can see that coming up if someone doesn't realize that they missed the registration deadline and they have their registration revoked, and maybe they don't realize that it's been revoked, and then they continue engaging in lobbying activities. Is that addressed?
Well, that would be a violation of this existing Lobbying Act, and then the question, good question you're asking is, how does that get before us? Because other than what we've just talked about, we need a complaint to be brought before us. Do you have a thought about that?
Yeah, I was thinking that it would.
So they're not. And if a lobbyist just disappears essentially, right, just doesn't file the report, it's treated as a withdrawal, but nothing happens. It's just, they're withdrawn. I do have a question. Is that lobbyist kept from registering then for 5 years? It said a withdrawal. A formal withdrawal is recorded and kept for 5 years by your office. But if someone just doesn't respond,
Yeah, the new update treats that as a withdrawal if they don't register for the next year.
it's a withdrawal, but is it the kind of withdrawal that your office will then keep a list of for 5 years so that they cannot register again for 5 years?
I'm not aware of the prohibition of them re-registering. I just assumed that if they withdraw, they could potentially resume that if they filed all the appropriate reports and registration in the subsequent year.
Okay. All right. But yeah, I think that it is a scenario that's not addressed. Do you ever thought about that?
I don't have any solutions to propose.
I mean-
I recognize that could be an issue.
Yeah, yeah. Are you aware of that fact pattern occurring?
Yeah, I think this board has kind of noted that a couple of times in the previous years. There might have been, we've seen like clients pop up and in subsequent reporting years.
So a little bit of an MO.
Yeah. I think this year we don't have any of those repeat violators like maybe we had seen in the past.
So for an individual lobbyist who fails to comply, they have to skip a year, basically, is what you're saying. They can skip a year and then get rehired by that same client or anybody else in a subsequent year.
Potentially, I think.
Because there's no negative consequence of not filing, as long as you're not going to be re-registering.
Right.
Yeah. Anyone have any thoughts? I mean, this takes care of some of the problems that we were seeing. Does anyone have any suggestions or? If not, so this is we can move on to the next phase. So this is, this was really a legislative update on agenda item number 5, and now we can move to agenda. If there's no more comment or thoughts about that, let's move to agenda item number 6, which is our annual lobbying and expense report from our Metro clerk's report for 2024. So we will now see where things stand this year. And we have in our packet, well, why don't you describe what you've given us and give us your report.
A packet on the front page. It lists there's only 6 lobbyists that failed to file their report this year. I noted that there was 94 total registered lobbyists, 88 reports received, 6 did not file a report. I'll note only one of the clients listed have new lobbyists registered for this year. All the other lobbyists and their clients have not re-registered for 2025. It was the Old Town Trolley Tours of Nashville. They have 2 new lobbyists for this year.
Well, I'll let you do your report first.
And on the second page, I have kind of a historical, the last 4 years that we've been recording this. We have increased in compliance a little incrementally each year, so we are now at 93.6% compliance for the 2024 reporting year. And on the last several pages are the more detailed information about each lobbyist that appears on the first page as not having filed their report. there's some additional notes at the bottom about whether or not they re-registered for 2025 or if they filed a report in a previous year.
So, and is there anything else you'd like to add to your report?
Nothing else I want to add, but I'll take any questions if anyone has any.
Okay. Please. Any questions about the documents of the report?
I have a question on the first page that lists the 6 lobbyists that didn't file a report. One of them has a note that says withdrawn July 29, 24. What does that mean?
That means they did officially file a withdrawal at that time, but they did not do a report at that time or by the deadline of January 31st. So even someone that withdraws is still
They
obligated
still
to
have
do
to
the
do the
report.
report. Okay, I understand.
And is that withdrawal a withdrawal of their registration as
Yes.
a lobbyist?
Right.
Okay.
And were there individuals who failed to file late fees that are not on this?
No, this year, with the enhanced code requirements, I was a bit more proactive in wrangling them up.
The late fees?
Yeah. So no one on the list is subject to that new, revocation of their permit.
Because if they had filed a report but late and
And-
failed to file the fee, you would have revoked?
If any of these had re-registered for 2025 but not filed their report or late fee, they would have been subject
Yep.
to being revoked.
But because they're no longer registered, there's nothing to revoke?
Right. None of these on this list have re-registered for this year.
Gotcha.
But there were lobbyists who filed late this year, and late means after January 31st. They filed late, but they paid their fees before your March 1 list.
So no one on this
No,
list.
just generally,
Oh,
of
yeah,
the
generally.
88
Right, yeah.
that
So
re-registered
there were some that did file after the January 31st, but did pay
the late fee.
Right. I didn't note those on here, but.
Right, because they
They are
paid, they're
compliant.
compliant, right, okay.
Were there a lot of those?
I would say 5 or 6.
Okay.
And did they pay before the February 5?
They paid by the end of the month, February 28th.
Okay, before your list went out?
Right, yeah, I think the new code says if by March 1st they haven't done
Yeah.
it, then.
Great. But you had the extra kind of,
Yeah, I was more proactive in targeting
and they understood that by
Right.
failing to pay the late fee, they might have to come before us
Right.
in order to continue to be a registered lobbyist for 25.
yeah.
So that's-
I did have one, I was working on Friday and finally got them in.
Yeah. You didn't realize debt collection was already expanded role. Okay, so it's great to see an increasing compliance. That's great. And also that, let's see, there hasn't been a dramatic drop-off of lobbyists registering. It's not that it's so burdensome that, so that's great. Okay, any questions about the format of these reports we receive? Everyone looks good? Okay, all right. So then the conclusion for this year, given our new powers under the revised code and given this year's Metro Clerk's lobbying report, at the moment, there is nothing we need to do.
Correct.
There's no follow-up needed for us this year. And only if one of these 6
Right, if they,
attempts to re-register in the year 2025 will we need to reconvene and talk with them.
And on that point, so if a lobbyist is not planning to register for the next year, do they have any incentive whatsoever to do this report?
no, and that's what I've ran into.
Right.
I've actually been in contact with 1 or 2 of these individuals, and they're just like, I'm not registering again. I'm not with that company anymore, or.
Right, so I'm not gonna take the time to do my report.
Basically.
So that's a little bit of a
Yeah,
loophole, I guess.
right.
Yeah, it's similar to the loophole that
Yeah.
Mr. Gutierrez mentioned, because there's no consequence to
Right,
the
exactly.
clients. Actually, they can just hire another lobbyist and.
Or the lobbyist
do
either,
over. Right.
unless they decide to
Right.
re-register, but, so anyway. Okay, I'm just curious
Well,
about that.
So let's think then. I mean, our last letter was effective. I mean, do you have thoughts about?
Well, I mean, I don't know what an appropriate response or reaction to that would be, because if they're not planning to register, I mean, you don't want to penalize. I don't know what kind of penalty would be fair, I guess, if they're not gonna undertake lobbying anymore.
Right.
You don't want to monetarily penalize them.
One way to go, but it would add a lot of burden, and arguably paperwork burden would be to have quarterly reporting. And it may be that at a municipal level, people might feel that that's excessive. I don't know, without characterizing it. That would be structurally, you could require quarterly reporting. So at least you're getting not, I don't know. It feels like a lot, would be a lot.
Do the clients get notice that their lobbyist is not, I mean, maybe that's a way, is to,
No, currently we're just in communication with
The
the
lobbyists?
lobbyists, yeah.
Yeah, like if you made the lobbyist and the client accountable for annual reporting, right? So even if their lobbyist leaves, the client's probably still accountable for them?
When we were doing it in '21, that was the thought, and that's why the client had to sign off, for that exact reason. So the client was had some responsibility to ensure the reports were going in for exactly that concern. When was this done, in spring, or this change?
This was in spring of last year.
Spring. They modified it and gave our board a role, but removed the client's signature.
Why, do we know why that decision was made?
I don't recall why that specific item was changed.
I feel like anything we suggest gives your office more work. I'm wondering if it would be easy, if the data is there, to track for a few years. I mean, this is great, your report showing the last 4 years and the numbers, but is there any way to track easily clients who have had repeated whose lobbyists repeatedly failed to report over the course of these 4 years you have data on? Clients who've had more than 1 year of not reporting by their lobbyists, to start looking at the clients, just from a data perspective.
Yeah, we should be able to pull that together with the data we currently have.
Yeah, I mean, we're not, and I don't know, maybe this is for next year, I don't know what people think about urgency, the importance, our role in overseeing this area of the code. Any thoughts about? So the option would be, the decision we're looking at is, do we want to really consider this right now and put a letter together and talk about our concern, appreciate the changes, understand that it does strengthen the lobbying act. It's the changes, I think, are good changes. And the question is, do we want to send and here's another thought, or do we want to wait till next year's annual meeting, have the clerk's office pull together the record of clients who are who are not getting reports in, because of changing of lobbyists who are not responding, and then look at the data next year with the thought that at that point, we'd have some data to then bring to the attention of the vice mayor through a letter. So those might be the two options.
Question about the timing. So if the clerk's office has the data, can they not kind of crunch the numbers and let us know about those clients who have repeat offenders before, that we can look at before the next annual meeting? So that, like, over the course of this year, if we look at the data and we decide that there's another change or update that we wanted to recommend to the council, that we can do that before the next annual report is due.
Absolutely, yeah. You're right, and that's the third option.
Okay.
To schedule another meeting, we'd have to do that in an open meeting, obviously. So to schedule a follow-up meeting for today's meeting and say, let's get that data and then make the decision. Let's look at and then make a decision whether we want to send up a letter or not. So that could be would we need a motion? Would that need to be by motion? I don't know if that needs to be by motion. Yeah, I guess.
Sure, so that, there's clarity,
Yeah.
that's the action taken by the board.
Yeah. Do you want to make a motion and then we can discuss it, get a second, and then we can discuss it?
Sure. I guess the motion is I move to request a report from the clerk's office regarding clients who've had repeated failures by their registered lobbyists to comply with the reporting requirement. And once we receive that data, we can convene another meeting to discuss potential consequences or recommendations that we can make to the council to address that situation.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so that's a motion and seconded, so it's properly before us. Any comments or thoughts?
I'm all for that. It'd be good to have the data. That being said, obviously there's more risk of a real substantial problem if they're repeat offenders. But even if they're not repeat offenders, having a requirement without a consequence always bothers me. And I'm not saying, my first meeting, I'm not saying I know what the consequence should be, but it seems like there should be a consequence if there's going to be a requirement. And so it'd be good to know if there are repeat offenders and who they are and how often it's been a problem. But regardless of that, if there's going to be a requirement and it's not being fulfilled, it seems like there may be some consideration for some kind of consequence to someone is warranted.
Okay. Anyone else on the motion? No? Okay, ready for a vote? Let's take a vote.
Chair Diani.
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter.
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Yes.
Mr. Sabas.
Yes.
And Ms. Young.
Yes.
It's 5 in favor, 0 against.
Okay. So we have a plan for how we will proceed in light of this report. A related question, perhaps, under our board procedures we have put into them our delegation to send the clerk, we delegate to the clerk's office sending the Metro Clerk's report on lobbying to the vice mayor, I think only a vice mayor,
I believe it's.
or to the full council.
The Rules Committee, I believe.
Committee, but it's in our procedures. So within, I think, 30 days of our receipt of it, so by April,
Yeah, by the end of this month.
by the end of this month, you will, on our behalf, he's sending them to the council on our behalf, and so you will do that.
Yes.
Okay. And separate and apart from that process, we will schedule our next meeting to address the data question on clients, to look at lobbyist clients' behavior over the last 4 years of data. So that will need to be scheduled. And why don't we look at our calendars? So what, I don't know what the state of the data is in and what kind of timeline you see as required.
I would say at least 2 weeks, I should have
Okay.
a full report
Okay,
available.
well, let's not put you under too much pressure. So we have Monday, the 24th of March, but it doesn't have to be a Monday, and parking garage is easier later in the week, if we want to think about, right, I don't know what people feel about meetings on Fridays.
I'm fine with
Is
it.
it okay? Or the March, we could say March 24, Monday, Friday, March 28. Are either of those days?
I may be traveling out of town on Friday, March 28th.
Okay, how's March 24?
That's fine.
Is that a council week?
No.
Oh, it's not a council week?
It's not a council week.
So that'd be good for you then,
It
the
would.
24th. How is the 24th looking? Possible?
I might be traveling on that day.
I could do the 24th.
Yes, I could do the 24th.
Why don't we, find that, let's hold that date and another date, and then there'll have to be confirmations. Will you know in the next week or so?
Just gotta talk to my wife.
Okay,
But yeah, I'll know by the end of the week.
okay.
Yeah.
You want to call?
Oh, do you want me to call him right now?
I think I'm kidding. I guess I can. But let's just pick another day just to see if we can find, what about Monday, April 7th?
Good for me.
Or Friday, I'm sorry, or Friday, April 4.
Also good for me.
I am okay. Wonderful.
I have a meeting that would conflict with our 9 a.m. start time.
Could you do it later?
This meeting later, yes.
Yeah, our meeting later,
Yes.
What time would you be available on the 4th?
10 a.m.
Oh, perfect. If that works for everyone else? So then we have two possibilities, either the Monday, March 24 at 9 a.m. or Friday, April 4 at 10 a.m. That's two possible days where we'd have a quorum, potentially a quorum on Monday to be determined, but it looks like a quorum, the latest we'd go then is April 4 and we'd have and then we can get it. And that would give you plenty of time then to get the data to us. Okay, and you can email it to us beforehand and we can come in and talk about it. Super. Okay. So, anything further on that? So we've scheduled. So that, I think, concludes, unless there's any more discussion, that concludes agenda item number 6.
I have a question.
Yes.
The reports that are submitted, are those publicly available?
They are.
Okay. So if any member of the public saw something on the report that raised a concern for them, the process would be for them to submit a complaint to us, for us to look into what's happening. Okay. Great.
Any other thoughts or questions? Did you want to just mention the ethics software?
Sure, yeah. So currently, we manage this, the lobbyist registration program just on Excel spreadsheets, and we're able to get all the data we need for the report, but we are looking at this software that is an ethical administration software. It would help us not only with this, but with the annual disclosure reports that also come under this board. And it's something we're looking into. I think we're going to start it incrementally, like with just the annual disclosure reports first, and then expand it to include the lobbyist as well. But it would be more transparent. It would be a public facing site for anyone to go look at those disclosure reports or the lobbyist registrations and reporting, and have more reporting capabilities for. Like currently, I compile all this just like I said with spreadsheets. It would just be actual more comprehensive reporting. So it's something we're looking into within the next 2 years.
Okay, great. It sounds like it could be very helpful.
Yes.
That's
probably.
great. Okay. And if nothing else on the annual lobbying and expense reporting or the Metro Clerk's report, we can move to the next agenda item, which is now agenda item 8, the annual election of board officers. Here, we do nominations, including self-nominations. Currently, I'm chair, and Ms. Young is the vice chair. So if anyone would like to self-nominate, or...
I would like to nominate you as chair and Ms. Young as vice chair. I don't know if I can do that. Maybe I have to do those separately. I don't know.
You
I think you
can.
can do a slate.
Okay.
Do a slate.
I like our slate.
Okay. Do you accept that nomination?
Yes, I accept that.
I'll accept the nomination. So we're going to do it as a slate. Why not?
It works.
Why not?
Yeah, so there's a motion.
Unless you want to-
Motion, is there a second for that slate? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And we'll do it by voice. No, we'll do it by roll call.
Chair DeYoung,
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Gutierrez,
Yes.
Mr. Savis,
Yes.
and Ms. Young.
Yes.
Votes unanimous.
Okay, great, thank you all. It's a pleasure to serve. Okay. Agenda item number 9 is next step in scheduling. I think we've done that. We're all set. Our board secretary will confirm the dates. There's 2 dates. You will let him know. You will talk to our other board members. We do have another board member, a new board member for the Central Labor Council, will join us hopefully next time. So we'll be fully.
And Ms. Grimes is still on. She's just not here today.
Yes. So there'll be 7 of us, so that will be great. So you'll let us know in the next week or two which of the 2 dates, but we have that, and you will be sending the report to the board, and we will be meeting again. So that any other next steps or scheduling issues? Hearing none, let's move to the next final item, adjournment. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all, really appreciate it.